Hi, everyone. This is The Engine Room. My name is Malcolm Kerr. I'm one of your hosts of this series, and I'm joined today by our CEO, Saman Farid. Just for starters, Saman, do you want to give us a quick background on how you got to this moment and your background both as a person and a roboticist?
Sure. Yeah. Really excited to be here. I think there's so much that we can do for American manufacturing. I'm so happy that there are all the listeners of this podcast that can join us at this journey. My background is kind of a little bit mixed. I got my training as an engineer. I worked as an engineer for a couple of large companies like Honeywell and Verizon and others. I then built a bunch of manufacturing facilities all across China. I worked to kind of commercialize a bunch of different kinds of energy projects and help build manufacturing facilities in far-flung and remote regions of the world. And then moved into the world of software, where I built a software company that I ended up selling, and then became an investor. So as an investor, I was really excited by the things that AI and machine learning were advancing, and was passionate about figuring out how that's going to be applied to the physical world. So I helped invest in almost 100 different companies, from robotics to artificial intelligence to chips to next generation self-driving cars and everything in between. And was really excited by the technology that is starting to become available, but ultimately became disappointed when I saw how little of it had gained adoption in the real world. In particular, manufacturing, which is this critical industry where there's such a labor shortage, where there's so much manufacturing that needs to be reshored to America. And, we started Formic really with this intention of making these technological breakthroughs accessible to the people who need it the most. And we spent the last 3 years doing that. We've put robots in almost 100 different facilities now, and really proud that 90% of our customers have never had robots until Formic made it available to them. And really what that tells me is we are expanding the accessibility of this technology, and that's something that makes me really proud. And so here we are, we're learning every day from our customers. We're figuring out how to improve their production and optimize the output and outcomes that they have, and help them deal with all the different pressures that come with running a manufacturing facility. And, I think we're at a place now where we're really starting to expand this mission to more and more places. So yeah, very honored to be here.
Fantastic. So we've learned a ton over these past few years around robotics as a service, where it makes sense, where it doesn't make as much sense. Can you talk a little bit about where you feel robotics as a service is most applicable?
Yeah, I think the question that I like to talk to manufacturers about is, what are the things that really make you unique as a manufacturer? And everybody has some proprietary pieces of their process. And in those parts that are very proprietary and very specialized, it makes a lot of sense for them to do everything in-house and to figure it out on their own and figure out how to manage it, figure out how to customize it, how to improve it, and really build their IP and build their strength as a manufacturing business in those very specific processes. But as everybody knows, there's a lot of tasks that happen in a manufacturing facility that are not that, right? They're not your kind of core specialty. And as a result, there's usually not enough attention and energy within the facility to dedicate to improving those processes. A lot of facilities attempt to have, folks that are in charge of continuous improvement. They have often, really brilliant engineers and, fantastic operations managers and facilities managers, but their energy and attention is focused on the things that are the highest value add, highest kind of IP unique, processes in their facilities. At the same time, there's a lot of, peripheral processes that are really critically important. And what we found is that facilities have been really successful pushing the easy button on those things, because otherwise they just don't happen. If lots of our customers, very advanced facilities, incredible, consumer packaged goods, manufacturers, but still are manually erecting boxes, right? Like that's an example of something that's been, automated, for the last 30 years. We have plenty of technology available to do that, but, people's attention and time and bandwidth is spent on these kind of core critical functions, but all of the surrounding stuff that still needs to get done and still needs to rise to that standard of excellence, often doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And so, Formic really exists to be that easy button, right? And we're not the only option, but the idea is, for the things that are not your core specialization, somebody else can handle it for you. Janitorial service is a good example, right? A lot of people will hire a third-party janitorial service who takes care of that and just takes that problem off their plate. A lot of people will use cloud servers so that they don't have to have their own servers in their facility, and they can just take that off their plate. And when it comes to a lot of different kinds of automation, particularly beginning of line and end of line processes that are very, very rote and very, very kind of standard and commoditized, it makes a lot of sense to just hand it off to a third party and get it done. So what we found is this helps people bring their automation roadmap from the future into the present, things that they had planned for 2027 or 2028. They can actually get to do it now and start reaping the benefits immediately. And they can free up the bandwidth and capacity of their engineering team and maintenance team and continuous improvement teams to focus on their core processes and not have to worry about all this peripherals.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is about this moment in time that's making as a service models popular? Is this a business model that could have thrived 15 years ago, or is there something very contemporary about this moment for this model and why it makes sense now? I'm thinking of COVID. I'm thinking of hardware advancements. I'm thinking of software advancements. Can you speak a little bit to kind of the why now of robotics as a service?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two, maybe three parallel forces that are happening, right? Like one force is exactly what you described. The technology around robotics has gotten a lot better in the last few years, right? Robots are becoming cheaper. They're becoming easier to manage, easier to deploy. They're becoming a lot more accessible. They're capable of doing more tasks. And the cost of the hardware is dropping because there's a lot more suppliers. The second force is this unique moment in American manufacturing where supply chain resilience and supply chain security is so important. COVID was kind of a wake-up call. The trade war that happened right before that actually also kickstarted this process where a lot of manufacturing businesses in the US realized that it's very difficult to rely on supply chains that are outside of your control. And so people are trying hard to bring manufacturing back, but it's very difficult to do without access to labor. These, manufacturing facilities today in America are often 50 or 60% understaffed. And there's all this, empty headcount, really, really high turnover in these facilities. And the need is kind of as desperate as it's ever been. The third piece of this is that as the technology around robotics has evolved really, really quickly, there's a lot of machine intelligence that is starting to become available that are able to make these systems more adaptive and more easy to move and displace and repurpose. And those are really critical parts of Formic's model, where we're able to take the most modern technology available. We're able to use computer vision and LiDAR and other tools to evaluate the customer's facility, to generate the right robot for the job, to validate it in simulation, and then deploy a system that we have really, really high confidence will work. And then also take on all of the fleet management responsibilities of that. So we take all the service and maintenance and responsibility associated with keeping that uptime. And that way the customer only pays for success. And that really makes it accessible to the people who need it.
So one thing that I think is really interesting about your background is you actually grew up in China, then moved to the US, and you kind of were in China during this period of rapid industrialization. So relatively familiar with how manufacturing works over in China relative to the way that it works over in the United States. What advantages do you think the United States has over China when it comes to manufacturing? Like if America is able to win back more of the global pie of manufacturing from China, like why do you think that will be? If we look forward in the future 30 years and we've done a really, really good job of reshoring, like why do you think that will have been the case?
Global competition is good for everybody, right? I think it's forced a lot of American manufacturing facilities out of their slumber and forced them to up their game. And that, I think, is a blessing in disguise, right? I think this increased competition ultimately means that we will improve our manufacturing base. The real advantages that America has today in this manufacturing base is a lot of very skilled and knowledgeable workers, right? People who've been at this for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. There's a legacy of success. There's a legacy of precision. There's a legacy of attention to detail that is really, really unique. The other thing is access to a really, really fantastic consumer marketplace, right? So as the products are made here, they are sold here as well. And what that allows manufacturing facilities to do is continuously improve, right? They can iterate a lot more quickly than somebody who has to wait months and months before something arrives and then test that out and figure out how to change it. And what that means is American manufacturers need to be a lot more adaptive to the changes that are happening around them and the changes to the product requirements and the product needs. The third thing is technology. There's a lot of incredible advances that are happening in AI and machine learning and computer vision and robotics. And American manufacturing is at the forefront of having the opportunity to use those tools. Sadly, over the last 5 to 10 years, those tools haven't really found their way into the typical American factory. We're at a place today where the robot arm used in America are mostly made in Germany or Japan or somewhere else, right? Sweden or something else. And that's a pity, right? Because I think a lot of these technologies are being developed here, and America has the opportunity to be at the forefront of adoption. And that requires a level of willingness to change and willingness to try new things. But what we found is that manufacturing facilities that are extremely conservative and afraid of trying new things and are only there to protect the little bit of margin that they have are generally not the best kind of early adopters of technology. A lot of our customers are the ones who are forward thinking. They're willing to grow. They have ambition about their growth plans, and they see Formic and robotics and automation and technology as a path to enable them to reach their goals. And we're very, very proud to partner with facilities like that because it allows us to really feel a sense of change and a sense of growth in their manufacturing footprint by adopting automation.
Amazing. And speaking of adopting automation and new companies and new ways of approaching old problems, what are some other robotics companies you're looking at right now that you admire, you think are noteworthy, you're doing cool things?
Yeah, there are a lot of really interesting things happening in the world of robotics right now. One example, I think, is Path Robotics that really has focused on building some of the best welding cells that are out there, to combining a lot of different kinds of technologies and to build a vertically integrated platform that enables those systems to deploy with really great results. Another example is Pickle Robotics that is doing truck unloading. That team is incredible. They've built really robust platforms and solutions and systems that allow manufacturing facilities to unload trucks, which is one of the highest injury areas in American manufacturing. Those are the things that we're really, really excited to see. There are also a lot of companies that are focused on building the next generation of computer vision and APIs and technology around computer and robotic perception. Some examples of that are Covariant and Dexterity and Jacobi and Intrinsic, which spun out of Google. There's a lot of companies that are working on making robots more intelligent and expanding the set of things that a robot can do effectively. And that's something we're extremely excited about as well. And then I think on the more speculative side, there are people who are building things like humanoid robots. Tesla is one, and Figure is another one, and Boston Dynamics has been working on this for a while as well. And I think it's very, very cool. It definitely brings a lot of attention to the world of robotics. It also helps us imagine what the future could look like one day. And I think there certainly will be some tasks where humanoid robots are the right answer. It's definitely not going to be all tasks, and probably very few of those tasks will be in manufacturing. But I think it's expanding the set of things that robots could do. I also would say that robots are kind of a misnomer because there are a lot of things that we work with on a daily basis that are robots, right? The washing machine or dishwasher that's in your house is a very special purpose robot. A lot of kind of advanced HVAC and air conditioning systems are robot, where they're sensing things and taking that data and help making decisions and then changing the output. We already live with robots all around us on a daily basis, and I think that this current wave is really allowing those robots to get a lot more work done, and that's something I'm really, really excited.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm curious to ask, what do you think is the biggest difference between robotics today? And this is intentionally open-ended because it could be a specific technology. It could be just the landscape of robotics companies generally. It could be the political climate. It could be anything. What's the biggest difference that you sense between robotics generally now versus 10 years ago? Like, where do you think the space has evolved the most?
I think the biggest thing by far has been the way that we think about programming robots. In the past, programming robots has been a very, very manual process where you would say, hey, move this joint 30 degrees, move that joint 5 degrees, twist in such a specific way. And a human would have to define each of those steps in excruciating detail. And if there was any changes to the process, they would have to go and change all of those steps. And that meant that while robots were kind of a flexible piece of hardware to an extent, in reality, they relied on tons and tons and tons of custom engineering for it to do anything useful. And each time that you needed to change the thing that the robot has to do, you incur this kind of additional set of custom engineering that needs to happen. And that's led to a lot of system integrators that made a lot of money on doing this kind of custom engineering work. I do think we're at the beginning of a paradigm shift where robots can be programmed much more easily than before. Today we're at the level where we can kind of define the points that we want it to go to, and it figures out the path automatically. As we add vision, vision can also help the robot know what the path should be that it can go to. And then there's even more, very, very cutting edge advances that, something like a paper that came out 3 weeks ago. There's this technology called Vox Poser, which I think is a really cool demonstration where you use human language to interact with the robot. And you say, hey, pick up this bottle over here, but make sure you avoid passing over, this soft thing over here, and make sure that you avoid, bumping into that wall. And keep your distance from something else that's passing through at any moment. And that tool can automatically perceive what's happening in the environment with basically no calibration necessary. It can understand all the objects that you referenced, and it can automatically design the path for that robot to accomplish all those things. Now that's very cutting edge, but I think it's indicative of where we're headed. Where robots will become much, much more context aware. And as a result of being context aware, they will be able to do tasks in the same way that you tell a human to do a task. You can explain to them the thing that you need done, and they can figure out how to do it.
Amazing. So I'd love to shift a little bit and talk about Formic, a subject near and dear to your heart, one that you know well. In your most basic terms, what does Formic do?
In the most basic terms, we are a staffing agency that helps factories fill empty headcount. We just do it with a robot. So when there are people who need positions filled, they can call us. We will show up with a robot. We will do the job for however long you need it. And when you're done and you don't need that task anymore, we'll take the robot and we will put it to work somewhere else. And what that allows manufacturing facilities to do is to have a headache-free way to scale up and scale down their manufacturing.
Amazing. When Formic is widespread, successful across the United States, what does that factory look like?
You mean at customers' factories?
Yeah.
They're filled with on-demand access to as much manufacturing capacity as they need. Manufacturing should never be bottlenecked by how many hours they can run that plant. The typical factory in America today runs only about 2,000 hours a year, which is about a quarter of the available hours in a year. And that's really a pity, because all of this infrastructure that's being invested in, all the forklifts and CNC machines and trucks and all the things that have been invested in sit idle 75% of the time. And that means that these factories can't be competitive globally. So our hope is that we can provide instant, on-demand robot workforce that can help any manufacturing facility instantly reach whatever level of production that they need, and do it in an intelligent way that's pain-free and easy. And what that allows our customers and these manufacturing facilities to do is focus on the things that make them unique. They can really become experts at making chocolate chip cookies or tortillas or dog food or plastic parts, and it becomes relatively painless for them to do all the other things. So they can focus on getting better and better and better at the thing that is their core specialization. I'll just say, I was at a bakery the other day, and they had this giant machine that the baker would put the dough in it, and it would kind of squish it to make it the right thickness, and it would put it through. This is for making croissants. You have to do layer after layer after layer, and thank God that machine was there, because that person could would have saved hours and hours and hours of time doing the rote task. And instead, this place was able to kind of perfect their croissant recipe to make the best croissant I've ever had in my entire life. And this machine enabled them to get there much faster. And so, I think the word robot is a little bit scary. But if we think of them as, efficiency tools, we use them all the time. This is another one. It happens to be a new category of thing that it can do well. And thank God that it's going to be there, because I think 10 years or 20 years or 30 years from now, we're going to look back and say, I can't believe humans used to do that by hand. And I'm excited for that future. I think it means that we're going to live in a world with a lot more abundance. There's going to be more people in the world who can have the best croissant in the world. And I think that's a world that we all want to live in.
If you think back on your experience as CEO of Formic, what are some of those turning point moments that stick out to you when you kind of look back in time? What are the big moments or milestones that you remember without thinking too hard?
Starting this company, I think, was a really unique experience, because we had to build this business as a mixture of insiders and outsiders. There were people who had a lot of experience in manufacturing. There were some that had less. There were some that had a lot of experience with robotics. There were some that had none. There were some that had a lot of experience in finance, some that had none. There were some that had a lot of experience in software, and some that had none. And that, I think, makes for some of the best teams where, we can't do each other's jobs, right? We all are here contributing to a whole, and each of us kind of brings a unique piece of the puzzle. And so when I think about, one of the most exciting moments for me was early on, when I realized kind of how much depth there is in each of these disciplines that goes outside of, things that I had a lot of experience with. Operations, super complicated for a business like ours. Finance is complicated for a business like ours. Software is obviously complicated. And robotics by itself is, not a simple topic. And so as we pull those things together, we have united a group of people that I think is extremely unique and extremely talented. And by far, I think that is our biggest advantage as we grow and develop. So, you're asking about pivotal moments. I think the things that stand out the most for me are the first customers who signed up to work with us, the first deployments that we had successful, the first time that one of our customers got additional, they got one system deployed, they loved it, they got a few more. Each of those milestones was really, really valuable for me. I think there was also a lot of milestones where people in the industry would look at it and say, "Hey, this is the dumbest idea ever," and there's no way you're going to succeed. And I think that really was a really good motivation for, I think, a lot of us on the team, because we just had so much confidence that this is the way that manufacturing businesses should use automation. This is by far a better product for our customers than the status quo. And I think every time we got criticism, especially public criticism, I really think that as a team, we kind of banded together and got really excited about proving them wrong. And I think that's just the kind of culture that we have here, is that, we take on difficult things. Sometimes when we take them on, even in that moment, we're not really sure that it can be done. But we kind of set out with a certain amount of resolve and we march towards it step by step. And we look back over time and say, we made incredible progress on things that we thought was impossible before. And I think that's where we are today. We just this week passed the milestone of 100,000 hours of usage. And even the fact that we're tracking the usage of those robots on a daily and minute by minute basis, I think shows the kind of culture that we have, which is very different from an organization that just cares about sales or just cares about getting things out the door or just cares about the bills that their customers are paying. For us, that's not the main thing that we measure. The main thing that we care about is, are our systems getting used? Because if they're getting used, that means they're doing something valuable for somebody. And we're really, really focused on making sure that those incentives always stay aligned and that we're always delivering value regardless of, what happens behind the scenes in order to make that happen. So, really, really proud of the team that we've put together and all the things that we've accomplished.
Amazing. If there is something that you could say to yourself at the end of 2020, what would it be?
I think the main thing I would say would be simplify. I think the nature of entrepreneurship is that you always have a lot of good ideas. And, the problem isn't that your ideas are good or they're not good. The problem is that if you choose to take on too many of them at the same time, you're unlikely to do any of them well. And I think that's something that we faced. We initially tried to serve way too many sectors, way too many customer types, way too many types of applications. We didn't focus enough energy on the things that really were the most important. That's easy to say in hindsight because now we know what's important. And I think at the time we were still figuring it out. But if I had the ability to time travel, I think the main thing I would say would be simplify, right? Like, I think we don't need to strive for the perfect answer every single time. I think we need to strive for a simple, fast, and direct answer that we can get results with and then use that to iterate it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think has been the hardest part about your role as CEO?
I mean, I think the hardest thing about this is saying no to things, right? Like, we have to say no to really, really good ideas all the time in order to focus enough energies on the few things that we have to accomplish really, really well. And that's a very difficult trade-off, okay? Because it's easy to say no to the bad ideas. The hard things to say no to and the hard things to focus the team around are the things that really, really matter the most. And that problem is compounded and made even harder by the fact that you don't have perfect information, right? It's not like you can spend months and months doing analyses and putting together reports and hiring consultants and then use all of that to make the best possible decision in the world. You have to make the decision about what to focus on with very little information about what the market needs, what customers need, and what the sales team is looking for, and what is feasible in a certain amount of time. And I think what that means is we just have to, make decisions and iterate through it. And that process of iteration also means that there's a certain amount of thresh, there's a certain amount of wasted effort, as we kind of build things that we later on realize we don't need. And that can be disappointing for the people who put heart and soul into building those things. But I think that the sense of forward progress ultimately comes from the accumulation of all the things that we've done well and a lot of things that we ended up, not needing, but we worked on today and later on realized, is actually useful 3 months from now or 6 months from now or 12 months from now. So one thing that I think about a little bit is, I think being the CEO of a company like Formic feels a little bit like being on a merry-go-round where you kind of keep coming back to the same problems over and over again, just at a different level of complexity. So how do we finance something? We solved kind of like the version one of it, and then I moved on and solved a bunch of different other things. 12 months later or 18 months later, we come back to that problem and say, well, it's no longer sufficient for the level of complexity and scale that we're trying to operate at. What's the next thing that we can do to solve it? And so things in the company just take turns being the bottleneck. I think, that's a good sign. I mean, I think it means that we're growing and each of those things is improving in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything that you would say to a new founder or a new CEO that is building a robotics company that's selling into manufacturing?
I think this is kind of generic advice for any company, but by far the only thing that matters is what the customer thinks, right? I think it's easy as a company to sit together as a group and pontificate and theorize about what the future should look like and what we should build and how it should work. A certain amount of thought like that is necessary, but ultimately the only opinion that matters is the customer who's actually going to use the thing. And so it's really, really important to focus on understanding their core needs. Not do you want a product A or product B? I think that's kind of too surface level, but I do think it's important to understand kind of fundamentally what are they solving for and how do they make this decision, and then design a product that suits that need.